December 3, 1942. 5:17 hours. The ruins of Stalingrad are still dark, the horizon only a faint smear of iron blue. A thin wind scrapes across the shattered city, drifting powdery snow over the frozen bodies half buried in rubble. And inside a bombed-out factory, its roof collapsed, its steel beams twisted like broken ribs, a single man exhales a thin cloud of steam. Nikolai Zaitsev presses his cheek against the cold stock of his Mosin, Nagant rifle. No words. No movement. Just the faintest tremor of breath as he watches the German supply route below, a narrow corridor of churned snow and rutted tire tracks threading between skeletal buildings. A convoy should have passed 10 minutes ago. But something's changed. The footsteps he hears now are scattered. Nervous. Too few for a truck crew. Too many for a lone patrol. You can almost feel the cold seeping through his greatcoat as he shifts, slow as frost growing across glass. His knees ache. His fingers burn. But he doesn't dare flex them. Patience is a weapon too. Below, 3 German infantrymen creep along the ruined street. Their helmets glint in the half-light, breath fogging as they pause beside the husk of an overturned tractor. One gestures forward. Another wipes his nose with a shaking hand. Zaitsev waits. A distant Soviet gun battery thumps. Just one shell. Far away enough to be harmless, except for the sound. And sound is all he needs. He fires the instant the artillery boom washes across the ruins. A single crack, swallowed by the thunder. The lead German drops like the ground was yanked out from under him. The other 2 scramble behind a broken wall, shouting. Their voices echo strangely through the empty buildings, as if the city itself is shouting back. Snow trickles from rooftops with the vibration. Zaitsev is already gone, sliding backward into the shadows. Not out of fear, out of habit. Never shoot from the same place twice. Never let the enemy think they understand you. Let them guess. Let them fear the guesses. He moves like a ghost, crawling through a gap in shattered concrete, rolling behind a column that used to support an assembly line. He knows every inch of this ruin. Every rat hole, every blown-out window, every patch of shadow deep enough to vanish in. By the time the Germans send a second patrol to investigate, he is perched in a new nest, a crack in the wall 2 stories above. Snowflakes drift through the opening. One lands on his rifle barrel and melts slowly, silently. Through his scope he sees them, 6 men now. Moving slower. Watching the rooftops. Rifles raised. One carries binoculars, scanning for muzzle flashes. Zaitsev lets the seconds stretch. This time he waits for a different sound, the groaning churn of a distant tank engine. The Germans relax almost imperceptibly at the familiar noise, as if comforted by its metallic rumble. He pulls the trigger. The spotter jerks backward, binoculars falling from numb fingers and shattering on the ice. Shouts again. A frantic scramble. Rifles aimed everywhere and nowhere. But Zaitsev is already fading into the darkness behind him. To the Germans below, it feels like the fire is coming from every direction, first left, then right, then above. Like a ring tightening around them. Like someone is watching from every shadowed ruin. Word spreads quickly. Snipergruppe! A whole unit! Ein ganzes Zug! A whole platoon of Soviet marksmen. That's what they believe. And as the morning light strengthens, the fear does too. A German half-track growls its way into the street, armor plates rimed with frost. The commander rises halfway from the hatch, scanning. His breath pours out in huge white clouds. He's confident, armored steel makes men bold, but he's impatient too, banging his fist on the hull for his crew to hurry. Zaitsev watches through a slit in the wall. The shot he's about to attempt is insane. Nearly suicidal. A commander is a high-value target, but only if the shot is perfect. He settles his breathing. In. Out. In. Out. Until the world narrows to a single man framed in a single circle of glass. Another artillery blast punches the air, closer this time. The ground trembles. Zaitsev fires. The commander's body stiffens. His helmet clatters down the side of the vehicle, The half-track lurches, swerves, crashes into a pile of rubble. Panic erupts. Germans shout for medics, for reinforcements, for covering fire. But nobody replies. Because nobody knows where the threat is. In just 2 hours, one man has frozen an entire sector of the German front line. Patrols refuse to move. Officers argue. Runners sprint through the rear positions carrying confused reports. Multiple shooters. Snipers in the rooftops. Ambush teams everywhere. The myth is coalescing, forming in the terrified whispers of men who can't see their enemy and aren't sure he even exists. And while they argue, Zaitsev slips deeper into the ruins, climbing toward a vantage point that will give him command of the entire supply route. He isn't finished. Not even close. He crawls through a jagged slit in the concrete like a fox slipping into its den. The factory's second floor is a maze of collapsed metal, frozen puddles, and hanging rebar that sway gently in the wind like rusted wind chimes. Zaitsev pauses, listening. Not for footsteps. Not for engines. For rhythm. The battlefield always has one. Distant mortars beat a slow, irregular pulse. Machine gun chatter miles away stutters like a failing heartbeat. Somewhere in the maze of ruins, a loose sheet of tin flaps in the wind, the city's broken metronome. He times his breathing to that rhythm as he settles behind a tangle of steel beams, overlooking the supply route once more. From here he can see nearly everything: the burnout tram car, the cratered road, the ruined apartment block where only a single staircase still stands like a monument to stubborn defiance. The Germans have changed tactics. They move in squads of 10 now, leapfrogging from wall to wall, rifles shouldered, eyes sweeping every window and rooftop. A sniper is dangerous. A team of snipers is terrifying. They're behaving like men expecting to be hunted. Zaitsev studies them through his scope with calm detachment. He doesn't fire yet. He watches. He lets them feel the silence. Fear is a tool, one that doesn't cost ammunition. The squad's sergeant raises a fist, motioning his men forward. His face is raw from cold. You can almost feel the sting of the wind cutting across the open ruins. Their boots crunch on ice. Their breaths come out in billowing clouds. Then Zaitsev sees it, a single soldier hanging back at the rear of the formation, eyes flicking nervously at the rooftops. A weak link. And weak links break entire chains. He waits for the next mortar thump. Whump. The ground vibrates. He fires. The rear soldier collapses without a cry, folding into the snow like a puppet with cut strings. The squad spins. Rifles up. Shouts. But Zaitsev is already sliding backward, belly to the floor, disappearing into the darkness. He moves fast now, not rushing but flowing. Through a broken wall, down a tilted slab of concrete, into the shadow of a collapsed support pillar. He crosses 20 meters of open space on hands and knees, unseen, unheard. Snow falls harder, blurring everything, turning the world white and ghostly. By the time he rises behind the rusted skeleton of a boiler, the Germans have spread out in a widening arc, searching. The sergeant waves 2 men toward the factory entrance, barking orders that echo strangely in the cavernous ruin. Zaitsev smiles, barely, a thin crack in the frost on his face. They're walking exactly where he wants them. The moment their boots crunch across the threshold, he squeezes the trigger again. The shot flies from an angle no one expects, high left, not low right where they last heard it. The first man drops. The second trips over him, scrambling back in blind panic. Shouts burst across the street. A machine gun crew sets up behind a brick wall, barrel aimed at the windows. A medic crawls toward the fallen men, his hands shaking. Zaitsev doesn't shoot the medic. He never shoots medics. There's no tactical value in it. Dead men don't carry fear into the ranks. Survivors do. Instead, he shifts again, climbing a splintered wooden beam, boots silent on the charred surface. From his new perch he sees the machine gun team clearly, heads close together, fingers fumbling as they feed the belt. He doesn't wait for artillery this time. He creates his own thunder. Crack. The gunner falls sideways, the MG-34 clattering to the street. Crack. The assistant gunner slumps over the weapon. To the Germans, it feels impossible. Shots from 3 different angles in less than a minute. Reports ripple through the ranks like an electric shock. There are snipers on the left. No, on the roof. There must be 10 of them. And behind those frantic voices, a deeper realization settles in the officers' minds. The supply route is becoming unusable. Men can't walk through it. Vehicles can't cross it. Morale is crumbling. One man is doing the work of a platoon. And no one can find him. Snowstorms roll across Stalingrad without warning, and one now sweeps in from the Volga, soaking the sky in a swirling curtain of white. Visibility drops to almost nothing. Shapes blur. Sound warps. Perfect. Zaitsev breathes in the frozen air, feeling the storm crawl across his skin like a second cloak. Every flake is camouflage. Every gust of wind another eraser wiping away footprints, scent, tracks. But he's not alone in the storm. A new sound reaches him, faint at first, then clearer. Engines. Multiple. Heavy ones. German armor. They're bringing machines into the hunt. Zaitsev steadies his rifle and looks toward the fog-shrouded road, knowing what comes next will test even his infamous patience. Because tanks don't fear snipers. But their commanders do. The engines grow louder, a grinding, metallic rumble that vibrates through the factory floor and sends flakes of rust sifting down from overhead beams. Through the blizzard-thick air, 2 hulking shapes materialize, Panzer IIIs, their turrets swiveling left and right like restless predators scenting prey. Behind them, infantry follow in a staggered line, using the armor as walking shields. Their helmets and greatcoats fade in and out of the swirling snow, phantoms marching behind steel giants. Zaitsev presses closer to the broken window frame, controlling his breath. A tank is not a problem he can solve with a bullet, not directly. But tanks have minds. Minds sitting high in open cupolas. Minds that want to see. Minds that think steel makes them invincible. He watches as the lead tank grinds to a halt beside the burnout tram car. The commander rises from the hatch, binoculars sweeping the ruins. Snow gathers on his shoulders. His face is pink from cold, but his movements are confident, practiced. Zaitsev inhales, letting the storm mask his position. The wind howls, a long, rising note. He times the shot to the gust. Crack. The commander's head snaps back. He slumps half out of the hatch, his body wedged awkwardly against the rim. The tank's engine revs wildly as the driver panics, and the whole machine lurches sideways, tracks grinding against rubble. The infantry behind it scatter, diving for cover. To them, the shock came from nowhere. And in the storm, nowhere feels like everywhere. The 2nd Panzer halts abruptly, its turrets spinning toward a cluster of apartments. Machine guns fire in short, terrified bursts. Brick chips spray into the snow. Windows explode. But the shots are blind, panicked, weapons fired out of fear, not certainty. Zaitsev is already sliding back from the window, counting on sound to cover his retreat. Heavy machine gun fire rolls across the street like thunder. It drowns out the soft crunch of his boots on shattered cement, the dull thuds of his movement through the debris. He descends to the ground floor through a hole blown in the staircase weeks earlier. Snow drifts here too, forming white dunes against the walls. The air is colder. Still. Heavy with the taste of concrete dust and cordite. From this level, he has a new angle. Unpredictability is his strongest ally. A squad of Germans rushes toward the factory entrance. Their boots splatter in slush, rifles raised. They cling desperately to the belief that the sniper is inside, somewhere close, maybe wounded. They're wrong, but their wrongness is useful. Zaitsev positions himself behind a fallen girder. The storm outside moans through the cracks in the walls. The wind is his buffer, his partner, his cloak. As the first German crosses the threshold, Zaitsev fires. The man drops instantly. The squad collapses into chaos. 2 retreat. 1 rolls into cover behind a crate. The last freezes in place, eyes wide, breath coming fast and shallow. Zaitsev doesn't fire again. Not yet. He watches them crumble. Watches fear work its way into their movement. Watches the certainty drain from their faces. Because he knows something they don't. They are not being hunted by a sniper. They are being hunted by an idea of one. Outside, the second tank fires its cannon, the blast rocking the ruined street. The shell screams past the factory, exploding somewhere in the maze of apartments behind Zaitsev. Glass rains down. A cloud of dust rolls through the open beams. The Germans think they're flushing out a nest of shooters. They don't realize they're only giving him more cover. He moves again, climbing, crawling, sliding through the skeleton of the factory until he reaches a vantage point overlooking the tank's side armor. Not to shoot it. To shoot what leads it. A group of officers huddle behind the tank, shouting orders over the storm. One is pointing angrily at the factory, as if yelling at the ruins will force the enemy to reveal himself. Zaitsev steadies his rifle. Patience. Timing. 1 heartbeat. 2. He fires. The officer collapses mid-sentence. The men around him scream louder than the tank engines. Now panic spreads quickly. Reports crackle over radios. Messengers sprint from cover to cover. No one agrees where the shooter is. No one agrees how many there are. Some swear they saw movement on the roofs. Others insist the shots came from the ground. But all agree on one thing. They can't move forward. They can't retreat. And they can't stay where they are. The storm thickens, turning shapes into shifting ghosts. The Germans call for more reinforcements, a full company this time. And Zaitsev knows the truth. The moment they bring more, his illusion becomes stronger. The legend grows. The fear multiplies. He adjusts his scope, scanning the storm for the next link in the chain he intends to break. Then he sees it, something unexpected. Something dangerous. Something that tells him the Germans are about to change tactics entirely. A new figure emerging from the blizzard. Moving with calm. Purpose. Authority. And unlike the others, this one isn't afraid. A counter-sniper. He sees the silhouette long before he can make out the details. A tall figure advancing through the storm with a steadiness that feels unnatural in the chaos. No frantic gestures. No flinching at distant gunfire. No blind firing into windows. Just stillness wrapped in snow. Zaitsev lowers his rifle a fraction and narrows his eyes. This one isn't like the others. The figure stops beside the stalled panzer, brushing snow from his coat as he studies the factory with slow, deliberate care. He wears an officer's cap, not a helmet. His posture is crisp, controlled. Even in the blizzard his movements are precise. You can almost feel the shift in the air, that quiet tension when a predator notices another predator. Zaitsev exhales. A counter-sniper was inevitable. The Germans finally realize they're not facing a platoon. They're facing one man, and they've just sent someone who believes he can be the equal of that one man. The newcomer signals sharply. 2 soldiers peel off from the group, taking up positions behind chunks of broken foundation. They're not searching, they're preparing. Establishing firing lanes. Cutting off angles. The officer removes binoculars from under his coat. Not to scan blindly, but to measure. He traces the line of the factory wall, lingers on the upper floors, then checks the windows across the street. He's mapping the battlefield. For the first time, Zaitsev feels something rare. Respect. A worthy opponent means new possibilities, and new danger. He withdraws from the beam he's perched behind, moving deeper into the building. His hands glide across cold stone and rusted metal as he shifts position. He has maybe 30 seconds before the German deduces potential nests. He picks a new one, a place no ordinary sniper would choose. Ground level. Wide open. But hidden behind a half-collapsed lathe machine, its jagged silhouette blending seamlessly into the darkness. He settles in. Snow drifts through the gaps above, settling on his shoulders, his hat, his rifle. The air smells of oil and burnt metal, a ghost of the factory's former life. Through his scope, the German counter-sniper raises his binoculars again. Slowly. Patiently. Zaitsev studies him in return. Tall. Clean-shaven despite the cold. His uniform is unblemished, not yet kissed by Stalingrad's filth and frost. A specialist brought in from elsewhere, maybe from the 6th Army headquarters. Maybe from even higher. But it's his eyes that reveal the most. Focused. Unblinking. Not hunting wildly, but methodically checking each vantage point. Zaitsev tracks the angle of the binoculars. The man is searching the second floor first. Good. That buys Zaitsev time. But only a little. A thin veil of wind sweeps past the panzer, pulling the storm aside for a heartbeat. In that opening, Zaitsev clearly sees the officer reach behind him and retrieve a long, slim rifle case from a soldier. He kneels. Unsnaps the clasps. Lifts the weapon. A scope K98K modified. A sniper's rifle. There's no mistaking it now. The Germans have brought their best. Zaitsev steadies his breath as the man slides around into the chamber with the quiet confidence of someone who's done this 1,000 times. Snow collects on the rifle's barrel, but he ignores it. His focus is absolute. He raises the scope. Zaitsev flattens behind the lathe, invisible unless the German has X-ray vision. He feels his heart beating slowly, rhythmically, a drum echoing through his ribcage. Then he sees the German do something unexpected. Instead of searching windows, he scans the ground floor. Zaitsev's breath freezes in his throat. How? The man checks the angles precisely, logically, eliminating obvious positions. He's not guessing. He's analyzing. Then his binoculars tilt slightly. Right toward the lower corner of the factory. Toward Zaitsev's corner. Zaitsev inhales. Slow. Silent. The counter-sniper lowers the binoculars. Raises his rifle. The scope gleams faintly through the storm, just enough for Zaitsev to see its reflection. A duel is about to begin. But duels require two people aiming. And Zaitsev isn't aiming yet. Because something deeper, darker unfurls in his mind. If this man has already deduced the ground-level nests, he might deduce much more. He might uncover the pattern Zaitsev has avoided. And break the illusion of the phantom platoon. Zaitsev cannot allow that. The myth must remain powerful. Alive. Untouchable. A single mistake, a single misread angle, will collapse everything he's created. Outside, the storm pauses, the wind holding its breath. The German takes aim. Zaitsev slides one gloved finger toward the trigger. Both men are still. Both know the other is out there. Both waiting for the smallest flicker of movement. Then, a shout. A frantic German voice tearing through the storm. The counter-sniper jerks his head, lowering his rifle a fraction. And Zaitsev realizes someone else has entered the battlefield. Someone the Germans fear more than him. The shout slices through the storm like a bayonet, sharp, panicked, unmistakable. It echoes between the skeletal buildings, bouncing in ragged fragments off cracked stone and frozen steel. The German counter-sniper stiffens. He lowers his rifle a few inches, attention pivoting toward the source of the cry. Zaitsev doesn't move. He blinks snow from his lashes, listening. Another shout. Closer this time. A voice trembling with urgency. Then the source comes stumbling into view, a young German runner, barely more than a boy, slipping on the icy rubble as he approaches the panzer. He's breathless, wild-eyed, clutching a folded map in one hand and a broken radio handset in the other. He nearly collides with the counter-sniper, who seizes him by the collar. Zaitsev watches through his scope as the officer shakes the boy, barking questions. The boy answers in gasps, pointing frantically toward the northern ruins, an area Zaitsev hasn't fired from all morning. Interesting. The officer yanks the map open, shielding it from the wind to study the markings. His face tightens. He waves harshly at a squad nearby, sending them scrambling in the direction the boy indicated. Zaitsev feels the shift instantly. This is not about him. Something else has gone wrong in the German perimeter, something serious enough to pull even a counter-sniper off his prey. He adjusts the scope, scanning the distant northern sector. Through the curtain of snow, He makes out blurred motion, shadows running, weapons raised, the faint muzzle flash of a gunfight barely audible over the storm. Someone, or something, is hitting the Germans from another direction. For a moment, Zaitsev considers the possibility of another Soviet unit moving in. But he dismisses it. There has been no signal, no whispered orders, no forward scouts. His sector is isolated. He knows its rhythm intimately. No. This is not orchestrated. It is chaos. And chaos is an ally. He shifts just as the German counter-sniper turns back toward the factory, fury tightening his jaw. The interruption has only made him more determined. But he is distracted, his stance looser, his guard briefly dropped. A tiny opening. A breath's worth. The kind Zaitsev lives for. He aligns his sights with the officer's silhouette. The shot is long. Unsteady. Barely visible in the storm. He waits. Just one more second. But before he can fire, a deafening blast erupts to the east, a Soviet shell slamming into a building with enough force to shake loose an avalanche of snow from every rooftop in the district. The shockwave hits the factory like a physical shove. Zaitsev's shot would miss now. He stays still, letting the dust clouds swallow him. The German counter-sniper drops to a knee, pressing his cap down against the wind as debris rains across the street. Soldiers scatter. One of the panzer crews shouts for the hatch to be sealed. The world becomes a whirl of smoke, snow, and frenzied movement. Zaitsev adjusts his position again, angling slightly to avoid being silhouetted by the dust flashing through the doorway. When the haze thins, he sees something new. The counter-sniper is gone. Not dead. Not wounded. Gone. Vanished into the storm with a speed that defies his earlier calm. Zaitsev's pulse slows, deliberately. Controlled. The battlefield has changed shape. New forces are in play. And the Germans have just pulled their most dangerous specialist into the northern ruins. Why? He strains to listen through the howling wind. A scream. Short. Human. Then a sound he recognizes intimately, the echo of a rifle shot. Not his. Not German. Another sniper. Someone is hunting in his city. He feels an unfamiliar sensation creep into his chest, not fear, not doubt. Alertness. The sharpened edge of territorial instinct. Stalingrad may be a graveyard, but it is his graveyard. His hunting ground. His silent kingdom of shattered windows and broken bones. And someone has entered it without permission. Zaitsev rises into a crouch, moving deeper into the factory's shadows, the storm swallowing him whole as he heads toward the echoes of the distant fight. What he finds there will change everything: the Germans' plans, the psychological battlefield, even the myth of the phantom sniper platoon. Because the newcomer in the northern ruins is not an enemy. It's someone far more dangerous to Zaitsev's fragile illusion, and far too close to uncovering his secret. Zaitsev slips through the factory's rear exit like a wraith abandoning its haunt. The storm hammers sideways now, snowflakes stinging his cheeks as he crawls beneath a collapsed pipeline and emerges into the open maze of Stalingrad's northern ruins. The city here feels different. Colder. Quieter. As if the storm itself is holding its breath. He moves low, weaving between burnout trucks and half-buried bodies. Every step is measured. Every pause deliberate. He listens more than he sees, following the faint pulses of distant rifle cracks cutting through the wind. 2 shots. Then silence. Then a third. They're not German. They're not reckless or hurried. They're precise. Like his. He crests a mound of shattered masonry and freezes. Ahead lies the skeleton of an apartment block, 6 stories once, now 3, its top floors sheared off by artillery. Snow drifts through the hollowed windows. A Soviet flagpole, bent and broken, juts from the roof like a snapped spear. Movement flashes in one of the openings. A silhouette. A shape. Then, crack. A German soldier outside the building pitches forward, collapsing face first into the snow. Zaitsev's eyes narrow. The shooter is professional. Not one of the local militia. Not a panicked infantryman with a borrowed scope. Someone trained. He adjusts his grip on the Mosin, Nagant, the wooden stock cold against his palm. He advances slowly, feeling the ruins shift beneath him like sleeping beasts. Another shot rings out. This one closer. He crouches behind a toppled section of wall, scanning the apartment building. He waits for a telltale glint of metal. A sliver of movement. A breath of steam. Then he sees it, a muzzle flash on the second floor. Followed by a soft cough of expelled breath. He knows that breath. Zaitsev rises, moving with a mix of relief and irritation as he slips around a corner and climbs the buckled staircase inside the building. His boots make no sound. His rifle stays low, but he is prepared, always prepared. He reaches the landing where the shots originated. Snow swirls in through a shattered window. Bullet casings lie scattered like breadcrumbs on the floor. And there, leaning against the wall with her sniper rifle balanced on her knee, is someone he knows far too well. Tanya Chernova. Her cheek is flushed from the cold. Her hair is dusted with snow. And her eyes, sharp, focused, impossibly calm, flick instantly toward him. "You move like a bear," she whispers without looking away from her rifle sight. "And you shoot like you want the whole city to notice," Zaitsev mutters back. A faint smile tugs at her mouth. They noticed. Below them, German shouting grows louder as another squad advances, blind to the hunters above. Zaitsev steps to the window beside her, careful not to silhouette himself. "You weren't supposed to be in this sector. You weren't supposed to take on half the German army alone." She shrugs lightly. "Seems we both misbehaved." He forces down the surge of panic, not for her safety, but for the myth. His illusion of a platoon depends on movement, unpredictability, and one single mind orchestrating the chaos. Another shooter, especially one as skilled as Tanya, could unravel everything. "Why are you here, Tanya?" he asks, voice low. She chambers another round. Her eyes harden. "They brought in a counter-sniper, Kolya. Keller. SS trained. He's already killed 2 of ours on the northern line. I came to find him." Zaitsev's pulse studs once. Keller. The shadow he nearly dueled in the storm. "He's mine," Zaitsev mutters. "No." She glances at him, her voice cool steel. "He's dangerous. And he has a pattern. Same angles. Same timing. Same signature." She pauses. "He's hunting you." Zaitsev exhales slowly. The cold sinks deeper into his bones. Below, the Germans fan into the street, shouting for suppressive fire. A lieutenant waves his pistol at the surrounding buildings, furious and terrified. Tanya steadies her rifle. "Don't," Zaitsev murmurs, grabbing her wrist gently. She meets his gaze with a look that says she already understands what he's thinking. "Your phantom platoon?" she asks quietly. He nods. "If you start shooting from my positions," he explains, "they'll know it's not a unit. They'll see a pattern. 2 shooters means they'll map trajectories. They'll realize it's just us." Tanya's expression softens, not with fear, but with understanding. "You need the myth to survive," she says. "No," he replies. "They need the myth to break." The storm pushes through the window in a freezing gust, plastering snow against their faces. Tanya closes her eyes for a moment, then withdraws her rifle from the ledge. "Then you hunt Keller," she whispers. "And I'll make sure the others don't interfere." Zaitsev nods. A silent pact between ghosts. But as he rises to leave, a crack splits the air, impossibly close. A bullet rips through the window frame inches from Tanya's head, showering them both in splinters. She ducks instinctively. Zaitsev freezes, adrenaline surging. That shot. That angle. Only one man on this battlefield could have made it. Keller has found them. The wooden splinters haven't even finished falling before Zaitsev tackles Tanya to the floor, dragging her behind the remains of a collapsed interior wall. More rounds punch through the window a heartbeat later, precise, spaced, deliberate. Keller isn't firing in panic. He's announcing himself. marking the beginning of the duel. The storm howls through the shattered apartment, scattering dust and snow as silence settles between the shots. Zaitsev cranes his neck, listening for the telltale echo. The report was close, too close. Somewhere across the street. Possibly the third floor of the administrative building. Maybe the gutted hotel beyond that. Tanya grips his arm. He saw us both. He was aiming for you, Zaitsev says, voice low and cold. She doesn't argue. She knows. Keller always goes for the weaker link first, or the perceived one. Zaitsev rises into a crouch, staying beneath the window line. He studies the bullet holes, 3 shots. One for the frame. One for the lower stonework. The last angle just slightly left, the kill shot if she'd stood 1 millisecond longer. This isn't suppression, Zaitsev murmurs. He's testing distance. Tanya swallows hard. We can relocate. Go to the far stairwell. Maybe circle behind him. No. Zaitsev's voice shifts into something colder, sharper. If we move now, he'll track us. He wants me exposed. And if you stay, she counters, he gets a second shot. Zaitsev checks the floor. Dust patterns. Snow drifts. No signs of Keller's first visual contact, which means he didn't see movement. He saw an angle. A line of sight. Keller's mind works like his. Terrifying. Exact. Predictive. We split, Zaitsev says quietly. Tanya's eyes widen. Absolutely not. You head downstairs and circle left. Make noise if you have to. Keller will track you first, he thinks you're the spotter. And you? She whispers. Zaitsev watches the snow whipping through the window. I go right. Through the roof gap. That's suicide. That's the plan. She grabs his sleeve. Kolya. He meets her gaze. Calm. Steady. Deadly. This is a duel, Tanya. I end it. Or he ends us. Another round cracks through the upper wall, sending plaster raining down on them. Keller is adjusting, tightening the noose. Tanya curses under her breath. She takes a steadying breath, slings her rifle, and touches Zaitsev's cheek briefly, a gesture too quick to fully feel. Don't miss, she whispers. I don't. They split. Tanya disappears down the shadowed corridor, footsteps light as a falling leaf. Zaitsev moves in the opposite direction, climbing a shattered doorway, stepping onto a sway-backed wooden beam that groans under his weight. Above him, the roof has collapsed enough to give him a vantage point, but not enough to offer safety. He inches across, snow piling around his boots. The wind roars, threatening to unbalance him. One mistake and he falls straight into the courtyard below. He reaches the top edge of the apartment wall and presses himself flat. Slowly, carefully, he lifts the rifle to his shoulder, peering over the jagged lip of brick and plaster. Across the street, through the storm, movement flickers in the shadows of the administrative building. Zaitsev dials the focus ring with numb fingers. There. A slight shift behind a broken window frame. A darkness too consistent. A silhouette too still. Keller. He's positioned perfectly, angled toward where Tanya would emerge if she tried to leave the apartment. Zaitsev steadies his breath. Snowflakes dance across the scope. Wind claws at his coat, threatening to push the rifle offline. He adjusts for drift. Calculates distance. Checks cover. Prepares for recoil. But before he can fire, Keller moves. Just a hair. Just enough to tell Zaitsev one thing. Keller knows he's aiming back. A sniper's sense. A hunter's instinct. A predator recognizing another. Another round slams into the wall inches below Zaitsev's chin. Chips of brick slice across his cheek. Blood mixes with snow. Keller is fast. Faster than Zaitsev expected. He ducks, heart hammering, breath controlled by will alone. He shifts position, 2 centimeters left. Enough to change the angle. Enough to turn Keller's predictive shot into a miss. He rises again, scope ready. A shadow flashes. Not Keller. Tanya! She bursts from the side of a ruined doorway, firing 2 quick shots toward a building downrange, drawing Keller's eye for one crucial instant. 1 instant is all Zaitsev needs. He squeezes the trigger. The rifle bucks. Smoke bursts from the barrel. The shot tears through the swirling storm. And he hears it. A sound he knows intimately. A collapse. A body hitting wood. A weapon falling from fingers. A sharp, muffled cry. Keller is hit. Zaitsev keeps still, watching the window. No return fire. No movement. Nothing but the wind pushing snow through the void. Tanya sprints to him, breath white in the cold air. Is it over? Zaitsev inhales deeply. Slow. Steady. Resolute. Yes, he says. But as he lowers his rifle, he sees something that makes his blood run colder than the storm. German troops gathering behind Keller's building. Not retreating. Organizing. It means only one thing. They'd discovered something. Something Keller saw before he died. Something that threatens everything Zaitsev built. The myth is cracking. The storm begins to thin, its rage softening into a drifting haze. What was once a whiteout becomes a blurry curtain of snow, enough to see silhouettes, enough to see danger taking shape. Tanya and Zaitsev crouch at the rooftop edge, breathing hard, steam rising from their mouths like ghosts departing their bodies. Below, the German squads move without hesitation, without fear, without the disorganized panic he had spent days cultivating. They're coordinated. Confident. Directed. Zaitsev studies their formation, his heart sinking with a coldness deeper than the wind. They're not hunting a platoon anymore, he murmurs. Tanya grips her rifle tighter. Keller must have seen something. Zaitsev nods grimly. Before the duel, Keller was observing the northern sector through binoculars. He must have caught a glimmer of truth, Tanya's shots from a different angle, perhaps, or movement he triangulated that didn't fit the pattern of a squad. He understood there was no platoon. Only 1 or 2 shooters. And the Germans, now emboldened, move like men who think they've solved the puzzle. We need to fall back, Tanya says. But Zaitsev doesn't respond immediately. He is watching one figure closely, a German lieutenant kneeling beside Keller's fallen body, lifting the dead man's rifle. The officer studies the scope, the angle of the shot, the direction from which it came. Then he turns, pointing directly at the apartment block where Zaitsev and Tanya hide. The Germans spread out, raising rifles, machine guns setting up, mortars adjusting. A net is forming. We move, Zaitsev says quietly. Now. They retreat from the rooftop, boots skidding on snow-covered boards. The stairwell shakes under distant fire. Mortar shells thump closer, shaking loose stone dust that drifts like ash through the corridors. Tanya leads the way, navigating the broken hallways as if she's memorized each jagged step. Zaitsev lingers behind, checking their tail, counting German shadows pushing toward the building. He notes distances, timing, rhythm, the instincts of a man who measures life in seconds. As they descend to the second floor, a mortar slams into the opposite wall. The explosion rips the corridor apart. Fire and dust and shattered brick engulf them. Tanya is thrown sideways into a doorway. Zaitsev is slammed to one knee. The world becomes a ringing void, muffled and slow. Zaitsev rises through the haze. Tanya's coughing, pushing herself upright. Blood trickles from her temple. The Germans are shouting, boots pounding as they close in. He grabs her arm. We go through the laundry chute. It's blocked, she protests. Not anymore, he says, pulling her toward a warped metal flap blown partially open by the blast. They drop through, sliding, tumbling, slamming down into a drift of snow on the ground floor. Cold shocks up their spines. The building groans above them as they scramble into a narrow alley between 2 collapsed stairwells. The Germans are everywhere now. Dozens of them. And more arriving by the minute. Tanya's breath trembles. Kolya, they know. Zaitsev grips her shoulder, his voice low and fierce. No. They think they know. There's a difference. He scans the ruins, calculating, deducing, plotting. The Germans have learned part of the truth. But not all. Not enough. Not yet. He can still salvage the illusion. Still make them believe the impossible. Still turn fear into a blade in their own hands. But it requires something he has never done before. Breaking his own pattern. Abandoning the careful method of striking from shifting elevated nests. He must become unpredictable in a new way. He must vanish. Tanya, he says softly, you go east. Back to our lines. And you? She asks, dread gathering in her eyes. He looks toward the destroyed factory district, his true hunting grounds. I finish what I started. Kolya! He steps back, fading into drifting snow. The ghost they fear isn't a man, he whispers. It's the idea of one. And that idea must walk alone. A German machine gun barks somewhere behind them. Tanya flinches, gripping her rifle. Zaitsev gives her one last nod, a silent promise, a farewell, a warning. Then he moves into the ruins, swallowed by the white, his form dissolving until only the storm remains. Behind him, Tanya watches the shadow of Nikolai Zaitsev disappear. Ahead, the Germans swarm toward the building he abandoned, convinced they finally have him cornered. They don't. They will never corner a ghost.